Let's talk to Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. Mike, a very good morning to you.
Mike.
Nice to talk to you. Some incredible things have happened over the past sort of 48 hours or so. Let's begin with Keir Starmer, who's only had 2 Cobra meetings despite all the violence that's been going on. Finally, last night, he seemed to get the idea that it wasn't just Muslim communities that needed protection.
Over 400 people now have been arrested, 100 have been charged, some in relation to online activity, and a number of them are already in court. And I'm now expecting substantive sentencing before the end of this week. That should send a very powerful message to anybody involved, either directly or online, that you are likely to be dealt with within a week, and that nobody, but nobody, should be involving themselves in this disorder.
Yes, I mean, he now says that, but he didn't say it the first 2 times he came out and talked about it. We've got Sadiq Khan today, Mike, talking about how, you know, it's time to go and check on your Muslim neighbours and your ethnic minority neighbours because they're not feeling very safe. You know, some of these political leaders don't seem to get it, that when they say stuff like that, you know, it angers people.
Well, it's very divisive, isn't it? And what's unusual is that who they're condemning is far right. I come from a Bolton council house. Most of those areas where they're condemning the people as far right are traditional working class Labour voting areas, often who have voted Brexit. And what strikes me is that whenever else there's a riot, when there's a riot which is something that the progressive left would sympathise with, for example, Black Lives Matter, or if you go as far back as the Brixton riots, which they now call a rebellion, if you read left-wing literature, because it's now called a rebellion, not a riot. So with those things, aftermath, of course, you lock up the offenders and people who've engaged in some sort of orgy of violence, of burning cars, attacking the police. They need to be locked up. But what to simply dismiss the background to this, the fears of the people who live in those council estates and the like, it is literally like a shameless sort of area. To dismiss their fears is never to solve the problem. And what it does, it leaves the police having constantly to clear up the mess. Because if they don't deal with the background issue here, which is people's concern about immigration and the like, then these things will happen again. And it's the police officers who have to face it up, because the politicians don't like what they're hearing and are choosing to ignore it, which is a fool's errand in my view.
Well, exactly right. And it's only because of certain incidents that happen that become flashpoints, you know. I mean, I was talking to somebody earlier in the show who said back in 2011 we had loads of kind of, you know, lefties and champagne socialists writing in The Guardian that, you know, you've got to take some account of the violence that's happening all over Britain because the ethnic minority population feels disenfranchised, and we've got to listen to them. And even though they're selling to stuff and looting, they've got a legitimate case. Well, we're not hearing any of that from the people who would have been writing that back in 2011, because, of course, they see the people looting and rioting and doing terrible things now as far right. So, therefore, they haven't got a cause and they, therefore, haven't got any excuse. Well, they're wrong about that, and I'm not talking about condoning the violence, obviously, but what I'm saying is that there are an awful lot of people in this country who fear that there is 2-tier policing, that different communities get treated differently, and white people are very much sort of under the cosh, if you like.
Well, Mike, I read in The Guardian, which is always an entertaining read, actually, that there is no such thing as no such thing as 2-tier police, and it's all a myth. Well, at the end of this month will be the Notting Hill Carnival, where people will be smoking drugs openly, committing criminal damage. Gangs will be marauding around. There'll be all sorts of crimes there, which are totally ignored, including sort of this twerking dancing with female officers, which in the past has amounted to indecent assault. Right. What I suggest, if you don't agree with that you go to a Millwall football match and engage in exactly the same conduct as you're walking towards the ground, because the police will very, very swiftly be on you and you will be arrested. So that's the greatest example, in my view, of 2-tier policing. We see it all the time. Right. And people... We're being told to not believe the evidence of our own eyes, and you see these gangs of British, Asian, Muslim men wandering around with swords and knives, and they must be equally dealt with the same as the thugs, white thugs, who are throwing bottles and stones and carrying any other weapons. But people don't see that, and It's simply that the people who are white and working class who are rioting, the people in power, the establishment, don't agree with them, so they're just simply condemned. And that is just covering a sticking plaster over an enormous boil, which, as I keep saying, the police will have to keep dealing with every time it bursts.
Absolutely. Well, I've got some even better news for you, because I don't know if you've seen this morning, but we've got West Midlands Police Superintendent Emlyn Richards talking about why they didn't send any police. So all that trouble, as you've just mentioned, of Muslim gangs wandering around with weapons, doing damage and committing crimes. Here's what he had to say.
Because we were aware through intelligence that there was a potential protest through that misinformation yesterday, we had the opportunity to meet with community leaders, with business leaders prior to that event to kind of understand the style of policing that we needed to deliver during the course of that operation. So we knew that there was going to be a large amount of people out on that counter-protest. We knew who the vast majority of those people were. We'd had conversations in terms of what that was likely to look like, and so our policing response was commensurate to that intelligence and the information that we'd held with our partners and communities prior to that event taking place. What I would say is that the vast majority of people that attended that protest yesterday did so law-abidingly, and they did it with the right intentions. There were just a small minority of people that attended there and were intent on causing either criminality, disorder or fear within our communities.
There's shades of the old BBC referring to the BLM March, where 27 police officers were injured, as saying it was largely peaceful.
Not only that, so if you're the man who was badly beaten up in the pub, or the pub landlady who had to barricade all the doors and stuff, it simply isn't good enough. And what you have there is the word soup, and it's endemic of the police that they would talk like that. The people who are determined to get promoted in the police, they follow this line with the religious zeal, because they can see now it was bad enough under the Tories, but now there's a Labour government, they have to follow this line. And it lets down the local communities, because we should have no one carrying knives. If the police receive some intelligence that there's going to be people carrying knives, they should be there, not ignoring it.
Well, of course. And I mean, there's a guy in the Mail today who's a Muslim leader, apparently from Birmingham, who said that he was actually at a meeting with the police about exactly what was going to happen. And when he found out that there was violence kicking off, and he found out that they were attacking a pub, he actually called the police officer that he'd met in the meeting, only to be told, oh, don't worry, it's all under control, there's nothing to worry about. And they still didn't turn up, even though the police station is apparently just a couple of minutes away.
Well, of course, there's plenty to worry about if you live in one of those houses there. And there's also,
and if you're inside the pub, which is being attacked as well, by the way.
Well, I live in Staffordshire, and there was a case where an officer's almost been investigated, or police liaison officer, for telling people, leave your weapons behind in the mosque.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being told, these alleged far-right gangs being told, oh, leave all your weapons behind in the church or the chip shop or whatever? There'd be a scandal. And it's this... People can only see this. The vast majority of people sit at home. And it's other things that are being peddled as well, Mike. So the government were telling us that there was these coach and train loads full of far-right thugs travelling the country causing disruption.
Yeah.
Yet when this was analysed by the Telegraph at Hartlepool, 7 out of 10 people came from within 5 miles of the crime they committed. So as well as it's no good just accusing the social media of peddling misinformation, the government itself is peddling information when it had no idea of the truth. And the truth is that the vast majority of the people who attend demonstrations will be law-abiding, local, and pretty voiceless people. The thugs must be dealt with, but they cannot keep ignoring the people. Listen to them, see what they have to say.
Absolutely. And what do you make of this suggestion from some, including the DPP, Director of Public Prosecutions, that they might have to kind of go after some of the rioters with terror charges? Because, again, I've got people saying, Mark's sent me a note saying, any thought of charging the BLM rioters of terrorism? I've looked back and can't find it. You know, again, everything they seem to be doing as the established kind of party of the government of law and order, if you like, is causing more problems.
Well, they're just fanning the flames out there. Every time they do this, what people will say is exactly what your caller or viewer said, that why didn't they do it for these other groups? And when we look at, most people know what terrorism looks like. It's the IRA planting a car bomb and blowing up because they want a united Ireland. It's Islamic terrorists blowing somewhere up because they're concerned about Gaza, or they want something like that happening.
Yeah.
So they can't see how these set of riots differ from any other set of riots, apart from the people doing it have majority white faces. And how that constitutes terrorism, I'm not quite sure.
No, absolutely not. And what about today? They've got a team of about 2,000 police officers, they think. They've had the warnings, which we got a couple of days ago, that certain immigration centres, lawyers' offices might be targeted. Can the police cope? Or is it one of those situations it's all a bit of a knife edge? If there's a lot of disorder, they just don't have enough people.
Well, they won't have enough people, and what they've not got, Mike, is enough experienced people. And what they've got is a lot of tired people, because these police officers are human beings, and they're doing the vast majority of the officers, especially the junior officers, will be doing their best and being told what to do. And when you work 12, 14-hour, 16-hour shifts, you cannot keep going. If you've done 2, 3, 4, 5 of those shifts, you are a human being, and you cannot cope physically with carrying on. So at some point, the police resource is going to become more and more and more stretched.
Yeah, and it's not going to be a good time. And I mean, there wasn't much trouble last night, I think, for the first time in about a week and a half. But I'm not really minded to say this could be the end of it, because I don't think it is.
No, I mean, what the police will be looking for is a special officer called PC Rain, because when PC Rain arrives, the riots generally go away. So what they'll be hoping for is a change in the weather, because, of course, we always get, if there's going to be a riot, it needs to be hot weather. And as far as I can see by the forecast, it's carrying on. So, as I say, if I was a senior officer, I'd be praying for PC Rain to be on duty as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely right. Mike, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector there. Still absolutely convinced, as we all are, that there is such a thing as two-tier policing. It's ridiculous to pretend that there isn't. And yet some politicians still just won't say it.